Morning, Paul. You mentioned last night that you thought you might have some more clarity this morning on Nathan's status. What can you tell us?
He's going to be out, and it's going to be weeks. So we'll put him on the IR today.
Go next to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Paul, a bit of a bigger question here. Under your watch, there's a number of players, Kyle Connor, Patrick Laine when he was here, Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, who've all reached, different upper echelon levels of their game that may not have been there before. Now, maybe that was going to happen with any coach being here. But something Neil Pionk just said to me is interesting, and the fact that he's up there in league scoring when it comes to defensemen. I'd asked him if he saw himself being that kind of player, and he said maybe not a couple of years ago, but once he got here, his confidence just kept growing and growing, and now I think we're seeing levels from him maybe people did not expect a little while ago. What's it take to be a coach who not only looks towards the greater good of the team, but is able to squeeze as much juice out of each individual orange the way you've been able to do for the most part in your time?
Well, I appreciate the way you worded that question. The truth of it is, though, of the forwards that you mentioned, they are built to do that. They're built to be that good. And what I'd like to think is that we've worked hard at getting those kind of players also to battle defensively, to round out their games. Cal Connor's putting numbers up no matter who's coaching this kid, right? We also had him killing penalties on the ice at the end of games. So that's where the work is here. We draft well, we have a tremendous amount of skill. So then Neil Pionk comes in, and he's a right-hand shot, and he can move the puck, so he gets some power play time last year. He switched his power play units, but then you have a confident man in part when he puts it on Nikolai Ehlers' stick or Mark Scheifele or any of those offensive players that we do have. You get a lot of positive results. So that maybe opens the door for a player who only viewed himself as one kind of player, that he has success in a different area, values it. So it's almost like for Neil, there's offense there, but he kind of came in as this really good, gritty defenseman. And then for our offensive players, they put up numbers because they're talented and they work hard. And what we're trying to do is get the other part of their game rounded out without trying to change who they are. So we encourage our players to make plays and use their skills, but we're spending an awful lot of time fitting them into a 5-man defensive game. And clearly we still have lots of work to do with that.
We'll go next to Paul Friesen from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Paul.
Paul, how do you handle the loss of Nathan, at least in the short term here?
We've got two left-handed defensemen that have both played this year. We'll put one in tomorrow. It may mean that we're going to have to get some penalty killing out of that guy. But I mean, Paul, you've seen it for as long as you've covered the team. We're usually 5 or 6 guys deep in terms of injuries on any given night. We're consider ourselves fortunate to be at game 25 and not have had to battle through that much this year.
Go next to Kevin McGran from the Toronto Star. Go ahead, Kevin.
All good to see you again. I want to talk a little bit about the physicality of the game. Well, actually, more to the point, where do you stand on using video replay to get penalties right, especially the big hits along the boards? Is that a road you want to go down, or is that an idea that needs to be explored?
So that's a general question, right? There wasn't an event in the game last night that you're referring to. It's a general question.
Yeah, it's a general question. Yeah.
Yeah, that I don't know the answer to that. Like that's a tough one in terms of time, right? I think the process is in place. If there's a hit along the boards, or if there's a headshot, it's really the ones that we worry the most about. That there's a player safety panel and they review it. And even with that, like on all of these, it takes time, right? I mean, they take days before sometimes they come to a decision. Are we then asking the referees to be a bit of a player safety panel on the ice? How long does that take? I mean, we want all of it out of the game. You know what, Kevin, like, I don't feel that there's, over a long stretch of time, there's a lot less dangerous hits that happen in the game. Like, I don't feel that that's clearly we're more sensitive to them, and rightfully so, as we've progressed medically. We understand the impact of these kind of hits and what it could have long-term effects on players. So we're far more aware of it. It's less prevalent in my mind now than it used to be. So I don't know that I feel a need for it. I'd also be concerned, like I said, it takes sometimes days, and they on these panels, it's not just one guy making the decision. They pull in a lot of information and input from other people. I think we could be there for a long time trying to get it right. And then, I mean, every time they send down a ruling, somebody's not happy about it. So I'm not sure it makes it better.
We'll go next to Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Paul, just going back to Nathan, this is a guy who 3 different times last year got hurt stepping in front of shots, and it obviously didn't stop him from doing that job again for you this season. I guess on a more personal level, to see a guy like that who just can't seem to stay healthy when he does such a valuable job of blocking those shots. So what is it?
It bothers you because Nathan's a guy that over the last few years of his career has kind of come in on those 1- and 2-year deals. I mean, this is his livelihood, and he's selling that, his willingness to do that. Clearly it's on display, and every time he does and he takes a big injury, it impacts his ability for that next year, unfortunately. So heart and soul guy, he'll drop the gloves to stand up for a teammate. He's not getting out of the lane of a shot. The price he paid for that is injuries that impact him personally, and then he's still willing to do that. So there would be a really good example of why we value his character and the importance of him to us in our room. He's not going to generate a lot of offense, but he's a valuable piece to what we do.
We'll go back to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Paul, we've talked at length about this team's ability to push back in games, push back after losses. And I've noticed that your players, when we ask them why they're able to do that, a lot of times they point to the veteran element on this team this season. Guys on the 4th line, their captain. How much can you quantify the effect that your veteran leadership has had on this team's strong mental state this season?
I don't know that I can quantify it for you. I can tell you that I think there's probably 3 prongs to this change and this development of that attitude. One of them was last year. I'm careful about bringing excuses out or going through the challenges that we're facing, but I thought last year was as challenging a year for a hockey team that I'd ever seen in terms of injuries, changeover, all kinds of just almost inexplicable things that happened to the team, and they stayed in the fight, to that point we finally got healthy at the pause. Won 4 in a row, feeling good. They learned how to battle and stay in the fight. Number 2, the second prong is we did bring in some veteran guys that don't get shook up, and they also, you look at that 4th line, they don't ever get ahead of themselves in a game. So if you get up 3-0, these guys don't start cheating the game. The same is true if we get down 2 or 3-0. They don't lay off the game. They're going to go out and play the exact same game, keep that battle. They're talking on the bench, so they have a big impact. And we're going to include like Forbert and these other guys that we've brought in. And then the last is the maturity of the guys we're not talking about. So Ehlers, Connell, the younger players that were very young, now have a different view of the game, right? They now feel far more responsible for where we're at. They've got more confidence in what they're doing. They're not just trying to make the team. They're part of the team. They're the drivers. I know I use that word a lot, but the idea that if we're down a 1 or 2, these guys are digging in, right? They're not waiting for the old guys to do it or following necessarily their lead in terms of how hard they're going to play. They're taking on that yoke themselves. So we've got 20 guys more capable of pulling us out of a tough spot.
Next to Paul Friesen from The Sun. Go ahead, Paul.
Paul, ESPN had a story about the mental health toll this is taking on some players, this whole pandemic hockey. And I know the world's going through it, and I don't expect you guys a bunch of people to feel sorry for you, but
Right.
But you are in a unique position, the players here, the way they're isolated, and that isolation can take a toll on anybody.
Right.
Do you guys have mental health practitioners available, and do you know how players are handling it on your team?
But we've talked about that in terms of the availability. So it starts for us with Project 11. Like, we're very involved with it. We have players that are kind of reaching out, but we also, with Craig Heisinger there's the opportunity for anybody that needs to talk to someone is there. So we haven't, I'm not a huge fan of reaching out to kind of that sports psychologist idea. I think that has to be an individual thing. It's almost like a skills coach. Every player, if they want that, they need that. But you know what, Paul, I think it's real. Like, I appreciate the way that you qualified it. So anything that I would say now, we're playing in the NHL, we stay in nice hotels, like we're not complaining, but we would feel it the same as you. Like being in one place for a long period of time without a lot of social interaction, without the, even the indirect fan interaction during the game, that might have, it almost kind of sets the stage for like the emptiness of it all. There's no interaction between the fans and the players. The streets are quiet. You're not out, you're not going out for dinner. All of the places where we normally interact with each other, we can't. And so we're aware of it. I feel it, and I think all the players feel it. And we're still, we're just getting into it too. Like we're almost halfway through the season, but we've still got an awful lot of road hockey coming up. So all I would say, I guess the short answer is we're aware of it. We've talked about it. We've kind of, if any individual in that room needs to talk to somebody, we certainly encourage it.
And final question to Mike McIntyre from the Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
And sorry, Paul, I don't mean to try and pin you down here, but are you able to give any more specifics on how many weeks, when you say weeks for Nathan, or 4 to 6 or?
No, it's going to be probably more than 1 or 2, but I don't think it's in the 4 to 6 range. It's in that midweek range, we believe, but it's all going to be about healing and then see where it goes from there.